In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing the show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube. Hello and welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Michael Bloom.
And I'm Nathan Seelove.
Tonight we have a super exciting, great episode for you. We're going to be diving into a subject which Republicans have been demagoguing for months in advance of the 2024 presidential election, which is immigration. What's really going on there? What's been Biden's role in it? And what's the whole deal with the border bill? And we're going to break all that down and show you, I don't know, who's really at fault, if there is anyone at fault, whether the Republican argument has any merit to it. So we'll get into it. And then we're going to dive into a subject that Nathan has been excited to talk about since he physically birthed his little baby from his own hips, which is what it is like to be, a politically conscious person once you have a baby and how that kind of changes your political perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I am so excited about tonight. I honestly, when researching the immigration stuff, and I was trying to focus a lot on the economic arguments when I was looking at it.
Yeah.
You know how it is where sometimes when you and I do this pod, there's a subject that we decide to tackle that we kind of think that we're right about. Like, we think that we're somewhat right about it, like our instincts are somewhat right. And then we research it more and we realize, holy shit, we were even more right than we thought we were.
Yeah, I love it when that happens. Almost as much as I like it when we think we're right and we read something about it and we're like, actually, we're a bit wrong. That's my number one favorite. Yeah.
No, that both of them I think are fun because ultimately, I'm of the belief that knowing things is better than not knowing things.
Sure.
Bold stance to take as a teacher.
Boy.
But I'm pro knowledge.
In 2024. That's
in 2024.
Pretty aggressive stance for sure. Well, cool. Let's Nathan, if you think you're so right, you libs, let's get into it. Let's talk about immigration.
Let's do it. So I want to start out by steelmanning the anti-immigration argument. Now, before I get started with this, there is one common anti-immigration argument that I will not be addressing, and that is the detriment to culture. And the reason why I'm not going to be addressing that in the steelman argument is because it's a stupid fucking argument.
Yeah, it's absurd.
And if I were to use that, I would actually be doing a disservice to the anti-immigration argument. So for the sake of the anti-immigration argument, for the steelman, to try to make it as strong as possible, I'm not going to use that argument. You're welcome. So, there are a lot of factors to consider when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the potential harms of immigration. The biggest factor that we want to consider is, of course, crime. Now, because you have this large number of people that is coming into the country that we have less of an ability to track, and we are less able to do background checks on them to make sure that they're not potentially dangerous people, they commit crimes at a higher rate than American citizens. All right, because of course they do. It's an intuitive argument.
Sure.
Right?
If you have fewer incentives not to commit crimes, because you have less to lose, you have less ability to be tracked, you're already undocumented, then it stands to reason that maybe you're going to be more likely to do crimes than someone who it's easier to catch and might have more to lose.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, one of the things that we also know based on research that contributes to crime is poverty. And a lot of these people are coming from impoverished countries. So it does stand to reason that a lot of these people are most likely going to be people that are more likely to commit crimes than natural-born citizens. All right? So safety is a huge concern. All right? Next, of course, there's the economy. So when it comes to jobs, because immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, tends to be either willing or because they're undocumented, are legally allowed to be paid less for their work, employers are more likely to want to hire them. And if employers are hiring them for a job, they're not hiring natural born citizens, which means that there are less jobs in the economy for natural born citizens. And what that also means is that you're not going to be able to get the benefits from that tax revenue. And on top of that, on top of the fact that you won't be getting benefits from the tax revenue from immigrants.
And is that because often they're employed under the radar because you're not allowed to actually employ them, and so no taxes get taken out of their pay?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. Well, that's the argument. That's the argument.
Yep.
Right?
No, this is all a steel man for sure.
This is all the steel man. This is all the steel man. Yeah. Don't let me break it yet. Don't let me break it yet.
I know. You've been so serious this whole time. I've been like, but
I know. I'm trying to be serious.
You're really
I'm trying
holding
to be
it together.
serious.
You're a professional.
I'm terrified that this will be taken out of context someday.
I know.
So they don't contribute to taxes, and yet they're able to get the benefit from our taxes, including various public programs, including Social Security, public schools. It's like we as everyday American citizens, as natural born citizens, and even documented immigrants, who are citizens, we are paying for services from our government for them to use.
Yeah. And if they're getting paid less for these jobs, they're more likely to be impoverished, which leads more into the crime thing, and also leads them to be more likely to need welfare and support from our social programs, which we also pay into.
Exactly. And on top of all of that,
I'm trying so hard to keep the laughter in.
I know.
This is why I could never be an actor. I can't do improv.
No, the line's coming. You know the line's coming.
I know.
Everybody who is listening knows the line's coming.
Yep.
But just wait. Just wait a little bit. All right? Just wait a little bit. So, in terms of the economy, on top of the fact that there are programs that they don't pay into that they are then benefiting from, you also have the issue of them being a drain on local resources. We've been seeing all of these videos. We've been hearing all of these stories of undocumented immigrants being shipped off to New York or to some other like pro-immigration sanctuary place, and them being like, we don't have the resources to take care of these people. So, it stands to reason when looking at that in a lot of ways, we don't have the ability to take care of our own in terms of when we allocate our local resources. So the idea of adding more people into that mix is just quite frankly ridiculous. All right. And on top of all of that, it is important to consider that the United States government does have an initial responsibility to its American citizens. All right. We have homeless veterans. We have homeless American citizens. We have children in poverty in our streets. And we should be taking care of Americans before we take care of immigrants. So here's why that's bullshit.
Booyah! Woo! Finally! Oh my God, I was about to pop. I was about to pop. My blood pressure was going up, man. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Oh boy, here's why.
Some of what
bullshit.
I just said are common arguments that sound logical and intuitive, but are actually just plain wrong.
And this
just bullshit,
Yeah.
factually incorrect,
Yep.
easily disprovably wrong.
Yep. And this is really, really fucking important. As I mentioned at the beginning, Republicans are demagoguing hardcore on this issue. When you when you poll Americans on the issues that they care about, it's like it's affordable housing, it's abortion, or like cost of living, abortion, and immigration. Like the clocks are rolling back to the early 2000s and the 2008 election because immigration is like the new top dog issue, driven by Republicans like making these, bad faith arguments that they've been making for decades, and as well as like an increase of border crossings and migration at the border, which we can get into. But
Yeah.
like disproving these arguments, being able to argue against these arguments is absolutely critical for us not to elect Donald Trump. And so it really fucking matters that these 100%. Are all bullshit.
And the thing is, Democrats are screwing the pooch on this. Yeah. All right, they are fucking up public perception of immigration by not pushing back at these bullshit
Obviously
talking points,
factually
and
wrong.
in some cases, embracing them or ceding points.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just saw this debate between Bill Maher and Megyn Kelly recently, which I guess maybe referring to Bill Maher as a leftist is no longer
so
relevant.
Two Republicans, yeah.
Well, he's still anti-Trump, and he was still like arguing. The debate was basically Biden versus Trump, and one of the arguments that Megyn Kelly brings up is, oh well, but there are wide open borders, and Biden is really fucking up on immigration. And Bill Maher's like, okay, well that's true, but look at these other things. It's like, no, don't cede that.
Oh
don't
my
cede
God.
that. Don't cede that point. Because it is wrong. It is incorrect. It is factually incorrect. And the thing that they'll often say, and I should have included this in the Steel Man, is that, well, Democrats are unwilling to tell you the truth about how harmful immigration is because they're afraid of being called racist.
Absolutely bullshit.
Absolutely bullshit.
Especially not Bill Maher.
Especially not Bill Maher.
He'd prefer it.
Actually, that was the argument that Bill Maher made. Like he actually said, like, oh, they're afraid of being called racist, so they won't tell you the truth on immigration. So here's the truth about immigration. So let's start with the one that's the easiest to disprove, and it's easiest to disprove with just a few studies, and that is that immigrants commit more crimes than natural-born citizens. All right, now let's look at both immigrants in general and undocumented immigrants. So there was this massive study that was done by various different professors from Stanford University, from the University of California, Davis, from Princeton University, and from Northwestern University, where they were looking at the incarceration rates of immigrants versus natural-born citizens over a 150-year period in the United States. And they found that in every single one of those 150 years, every single one, without exception, consistently, immigrants were incarcerated at a lower rate than natural-born citizens. All right? In every single year. And today, immigrants are 60% less likely to be incarcerated than U.S.-born citizens.
Yep.
All right? And that looks at immigrants in general. So let's look at specifically undocumented immigrants. So there was a study done in Texas that was published by the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And this was looking at arrests for violent felonies and drug-related felonies in Texas from 2012 to 2018. Now, Texas is an important state when it comes to the immigration debate because of the fact that like most of the U.S. And Mexico border is Texas. Like is Texas. So what they found was that U.S. citizens were 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for felony drug crimes and 4 times more likely to be arrested for property crimes and twice as likely to be arrested for violent felonies.
Jesus. Wow. Then relative to undocumented immigrants?
Relative specifically to undocumented immigrants.
Wow. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The data here is just like, it just piles up. It's kind of remarkable. Yeah. Like on a more correlative like perspective, our national violent crime rate has trended down after spikes in 2020 and 2021, even as we've had a pretty significant, in fact, an enormous surge in migration, including an enormous influx of undocumented migrants as well. And there's this correlative perspective. In addition, from an anecdotal perspective, there's been some analysis of crime data in 2024 in cities where Texas has illegally bused or or flown migrants from the border to these major cities, often targeting like sanctuary cities as some kind of like political gotcha and using humans as fucking pawns, which is fucking awful. But interesting that crime levels are actually dropping in those cities that have received the most migrants. So, like, to Nathan's point, like, not only is there consistent long-term longitudinal data that, immigration status and migration are not drivers of crime, but in like recent correlation and analysis, it doesn't seem like even like recent migration is a significant driver of crime.
Yeah.
And that's just like, crime as like a overall umbrella. The other things that the Republicans are demagoguing is blaming migrants for the drug crisis. That's been a huge one. Kevin McCarthy claimed that that there was a tie between the fentanyl crisis and the rise in fentanyl deaths, and our open borders and flooding our streets with fentanyl. Except the problem is that 90% of fentanyl in the United States arrives through ports of entry and not via border crossings, and that 86% of people convicted for trafficking fentanyl across the border in 2021 were U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
So not that. The other crime that we've been hearing Republicans demagogue a bunch is this absurd claim that terrorists are sneaking across our border.
Yeah.
Because the border's open, essentially, is their claim. And Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, said that 312 suspects on the terrorist watch list have been apprehended. We have no idea how many terrorists have come into the country and set up terrorism cells across the nation. So first off, the watch list is referring to includes like family members of potential like high risk and terrorist individuals. But this is also 312 out of 6.2 million people who have crossed the border since 2020. And on top of that, for more than 50 years, no American has been killed or injured in a terrorist attack in the United States that has involved someone who crossed the border illegally. So again, this is not a problem that currently exists.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I just want to point out something. Apprehended, right? These are people who are apprehended.
Yeah.
I will convince you that the borders are wide open, and to do so, I will show you how many people are apprehended.
Yeah.
If people are being apprehended, then the borders are not fucking open.
Yeah, exactly.
If they were open, then no one would be apprehended. There would be no...
I think that is I love that. That is the most foundational chink in the armor of this manufactured problem. Because like the thing is like the volume of people coming to our southern border seeking either refuge or home in the United States is high.
Yes.
Like it has reached record levels. In December 2023 alone, Border Patrol agents recorded over 300,000 encounters, which was the new record high in that 1 month versus an average monthly volume between 2013 and 2019 of just 39,000. So we're talking nearly 10 times the average monthly volume in that 1 month of December. There's a lot like of volume that's going across the border. And on top of that, we have a lot of people migrating, fleeing, war, political and financial insecurity, violence, poverty, natural disasters, all of these like drivers. And these people typically are coming to seek asylum. And one thing to call out is these people have a right to seek asylum here. Like our law is that they can. But one of the challenges here is that it currently takes about 3 to 7 years for an asylum adjudication to actually be heard. And the current backlog is over 2 million asylum cases for around 700 immigration judges. So thousands of cases of backlog per judge. So like there is a problem here. The crisis is not immigration, right?
Yeah.
It's not a problem with immigration itself. And so to your point, Nathan, like the very fact that we have a surge in encounters and a surge in apprehensions and a surge in asylum cases means that we are identifying, like documenting, and you know, like receiving these people. These are not people that are just disappearing, or else we would have studies showing that. There would be analyses showing the number of people we're missing, but no one
And
is citing those
the
stats.
methodology wouldn't be based on apprehensions.
Exactly.
They would find some other methodology.
Yeah.
The fact that we have apprehensions to serve our methodology in terms of trying to understand how many people are coming across the border is proof that they're not fucking open.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
anytime, to be clear, anytime anybody claims that our borders are open, you can stop taking them seriously.
Yep.
Because they're not
Not informed at the very least.
They've either fallen for propaganda or they're a propagandist.
Yes.
Plain and simple.
Yep.
Because they're just not open. It's just not true.
Yep.
So the crime argument, which is a huge crux of the anti-immigration craze, is just not true.
Yeah.
It is just false. It is factually incorrect.
Wait, there
So
is one other crime I just have to call out, because this is like a recent thing that Mike Johnson and Trump surrogates are calling out, which I think is fucking hilarious. It's combining their two favorite things: demagoguing immigration and voter fraud. Because they're claiming that Mike Johnson said, quote, "It seems like common sense. I'm sure all of us would agree that we only want U.S. citizens to vote in U.S. elections, because he has introduced a bill to crack down on non-citizens voting." The problem is, one, it's already illegal. In fact, there are very stiff fines or not fines, but like there's very stiff punishments associated with this. The other thing is, this is a great point from Sean Morales Doyle, who's a lawyer for the Brennan Center for Justice. He said, quote, "This is a crime where not only are the consequences really high and the payoff really low, you're not getting millions of dollars. It's not robbing a bank. You get to cast one ballot. But what also makes this somewhat unique is that committing this crime actually entails the creation of a government record of your crime."
Yeah.
It's like, it's already illegal. No one's doing it. And when I say no one's doing it, like really, in 2016, the Brennan
It's
Center
statistically insignificant.
found 30 suspected non-citizen votes among 23.5 million votes cast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not happening.
It is not a statistically significant amount.
Yeah,
All
and
right?
it's basically
it's just
impossible. So
Yeah. Yeah. So there's why that's bullshit.
Yep.
Next, let's go ahead and talk about the immigrants are stealing our jobs argument.
Yeah.
Because this is a really common one. Like
Yeah.
this is just classic, all right? And again, this is another one of those arguments, like the crime argument, that seem somewhat intuitive, but when you actually look at some of the numbers and you actually study it for a little bit, you realize that's also just not the case. So there was a study done by Ben Jones, who is a professor of strategy at Kellogg, and he did this in conjunction with Professor Pierre Azoulay of MIT, Daniel Kim of the University of Pennsylvania, Javier Miranda of the U.S. Census Bureau. And they wanted to look at some of the ways in which immigration shapes the economy. And what they found specifically, what they wanted to look at is, to what extent do immigrants grow the economy in terms of job creation as potential employers? And what they found was kind of remarkable.
So let's take a moment to pause on that. The job creation from immigrants as potential employers. So
Yes.
this is like innovation, small business owners, things like that, right?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
innovation, small business owners,
Employers.
and big business owners.
Yeah, people-
and big business owners.
Totally. People that end
Yeah.
up employing other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So these are jobs being created.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things they found, and they were looking specifically at firms that were created in 2005, between 2005 and 2010. So these are firms that today will have grown significantly. This is just their origin. That 0.63% of immigrants in the workforce started a firm, while only 0.46% of U.S. born ones did. On top of that, taking into account the fact that, we have to consider that some of these firms are older and more stable. You also want to look at specifically entrepreneurs, not just people that founded these places, but entrepreneurs. And they found that 7.25% of immigrants were entrepreneurs versus 4% of native-born individuals. And when you put these together, all right, according to Jones, when he interpreted this data, when he was explaining what this data means, the rate of founding a business is 80% higher, 80% higher among the non-U.S. born citizens than the U.S. born ones. Immigrants are not taking jobs away. They're creating them.
Hell yeah.
And on top of that, these jobs that they looked at tended to be higher paying, higher quality, which meant that they yielded more tax revenue.
Mm-hmm. Dang.
And better opportunities.
That is a fucking slam dunk. Yeah.
Boom!
That's remarkable. And that's the thing. Like, even if that were not true, like, even if you don't even have to go all the way to the incredible fact that an immigrant or a non-native born U.S. citizen is like more likely to start a business than a U.S. born citizen, which is remarkable, and create new jobs and grow the economy and all that stuff. They're also like pretty much critical to the U.S. economy and growth all around.
Which is the next big point.
Yeah, exactly. They are absolutely critical to like the growth of the U.S. economy.
And when you think about it, it is actually somewhat intuitive, because one of the biggest reasons why the United States is appealing to immigrants is opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
All right. A lot of immigrants who come to the United States come specifically because they want some type of economic opportunity. They have a drive.
Yep.
For business. All right. We want that kind of drive. We want that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also the numbers are just conclusive that undocumented immigrants especially are not, and immigrants are not taking quote unquote jobs. Like, unemployment rate in the U.S. among U.S. born workers averaged 3.6% in 2023, which is the lowest rate on record. So like the fact that we've had a record number of people coming across the border and also record low unemployment for U.S. workers makes that pretty much an impossibility. The long-term average, by the way, for unemployment in the U.S. is 5.7%. So just over 2% higher than what U.S. workers have experienced recently. And so, like, at the same time, like, prime-aged U.S.-born workers, their employment rate is the highest that it's been since 2001. So, like, people who are working age are not having their jobs taken or replaced by immigrants or migrants. On top of the fact that U.S.-born men without a bachelor's degree, right? So this would be theoretically a group that would be competing head to head for the kinds of jobs that undocumented folks might be competing for in the United States, right? So their participation rate has remained steady and high even while we've seen this influx of like migrant labor and migrant workers in the United States. So like overall, we're just not seeing jobs flow from U.S. workers to like migrant workers. And at the same time, again, like the U.S. economic growth is dependent on immigration. So the Congressional Budget Office recently reported that the expected immigration forecast is going to add 2% to U.S. GDP over the next 10 years, which is a absolutely remarkable number. Some countries only see 2% in total in GDP growth, uh, which is like, it's really incredible. And
Yeah.
what's
Yeah, that is a to put that into dollar amounts. That is a $7 trillion boost to the economy.
yeah, and that analysis is just on the impact of the growth in immigration from 2022, right? If so, assuming that we see kind of consistent volume for the next few years, right? This growth in migration from 2022 has added $7 trillion to the U.S. economy over the next 10 years. That is like a ridiculous amount of money, specifically from the infusion of like workers and labor into the US economy. These workers are often like younger as well, which means they'll spend more time working before retirement, which is like super valuable to the economy. And at the same time, they will more than offset the expected retirement of aging native born population, which is very, very good because population growth is one of the main ways that we get job growth, which is one of the main ways that we get economic growth. So these people will add $7 trillion to the US economy and $1 trillion to the US revenue over that period that would just not have been there otherwise.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to mention about this, and especially about this like CBO report, is like, this shit's crazy, guys. Okay, so during the pandemic, we all remember this. We had
Mm.
significant limitations on migration, and we also had huge labor shortages as like, people opted out of the economy because to stay safe. And so we had labor
And
shortages.
wherever could this be going?
Yeah. So we had labor shortages and supply chain problems. And what we've seen since 2022 is that the inflow of immigrant and migrant labor has significantly contributed to the rectification of the labor shortage and supply chain problems. According to the Federal Reserve, the increase in migration and work permitting, which came out of the pandemic, and therefore the boost in job growth, helped to unwind the supply chain kinks that were crippling the U.S. economy and causing all of the inflation that all of the Republicans are blaming on Biden. Jeremy Powell said, quote, "The U.S. economy has benefited from immigration. And frankly, just in the last year, a big part of the story of the labor market coming back into better balance is immigration returning to levels that were more typical of the pre-pandemic era. Without 2022 migration and the influx of migrants, we would not have recovered from the impending potential recession that came out of COVID."
So they were fear mongering about that influx of immigration. They're like, this is Biden's border crisis. In the meantime, that fucking influx of immigration saved our economy.
Yep. And it reduced prices. Like, inflation would be
Yeah.
way worse without this group of people that are risking life and limb to help participate in this economy.
So immigrants literally saved our economy.
Yeah.
Like, just plain and simple.
Yep.
Now, let's address another important aspect of how they're able to save our economy. Because one of the arguments that you often hear that I made during the Steelman segment is that immigrants don't pay taxes, which means that and they benefit from various different social programs, which means they're benefiting from programs that they don't pay into. The opposite is actually true. Like, literally the opposite is actually true.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at how undocumented immigrants actually do pay taxes by kind of breaking apart the various different types of taxes. First off, the obvious one that you don't really need a lot of time to break this down to know that, like, undocumented immigrants are obviously paying this tax is, of course, sales tax.
Yeah.
All right, sales tax. Everybody pays sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
You buy something. Unless you are a part of a government agency or a government institution that is doesn't have to pay taxes, that is tax exempt. Which, by the way, I don't know if you've ever been working on behalf of a like state government agency or state government group that was tax exempt. Um, Trying to argue that, trying to claim that when you go to buy stuff is a pain in the ass.
Oh, I actually have I've experienced on the other side, but we don't have to
Yeah.
talk about it. Working for a retailer, I was working on a project to help streamline that process.
Yeah. But anyways, the not at all relevant. So they pay sales taxes, all right, and that's just kind of obvious. You know, you buy something, you pay sales tax. They pay property tax. You know, that's something that's fairly intuitive. If you own property, you pay property tax. You know, and property tax goes towards funding public schools. Just one thing to keep in mind, which is actually kind of fitting in this, because public schools are actually one of the few government services that immigrants, both legal who are not citizens but still legal and undocumented, can usually still take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so so property taxes they do pay if they own property. On top of that, there was a system that was created by the IRS in 1996 called the Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. All right, also referred to as ITIN. And what this number basically does is if you are either an undocumented immigrant or even a documented immigrant that does not have a social security number because you're not a citizen, maybe you're here on a visa or whatever, you get this number so that you can still pay taxes to the IRS. All right, which means that you can still file tax returns.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the Economic Policy Institute actually estimates that about half of all undocumented immigrants actually do file tax returns every year, right? Meaning that at least half of undocumented immigrants do pay federal income tax.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now you might be thinking, well, hold on, Nathan. Isn't the point of being an undocumented immigrant that you don't have to pay taxes, right? That you don't have to pay income taxes because it's under the table. You know, why the hell, if you don't have to pay federal income taxes because you're being paid under the table, why would you get one of these identification numbers? Why would you get an ITIN number? Well, there's actually a few reasons why you might do that. One reason...
Voting.
No. One reason is that undocumented immigrants are actually often advised by immigration lawyers and immigration advocates that paying taxes using an ITIN can actually help with their pathway to citizenship. If you're able to demonstrate that you have been paying taxes, then when you are trying to apply for citizenship, you can actually use that. On top of that, when it comes to when you do get your citizenship, when it comes to earning various tax credits after you've earned your citizenship, they actually will take into account your tax returns from back before you were a citizen. All right, so there's advantages to that level. On top of that, as it stands, it is illegal for the IRS to share your information with any other government agency except the Treasury. And that's only to deal with like financial crimes and stuff. Because think about it, there's a lot of personal information that you give the IRS when you file your tax returns.
Yeah.
All right.
And we want to incentivize you to share accurate and full information with the IRS.
Exactly. If undocumented immigrants thought that the IRS was going to turn them in to Border Patrol, then there's no fucking reason why they would get this number. Like, one thing that is necessary for us to benefit from all of this tax revenue that we're getting from immigrants who have an ITIN number is that they don't think that they're going to get caught because of it.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that is a little concerning is the fact that, so as it stands, the only way that could change is with legislation, and it is often brought up in legislative debates as to whether or not a law should be passed that will force the IRS to give this personal information to Customs and Border Patrol in order to allow them to basically track these people down and deport them. But even having that debate is fucking stupid because when you have that debate, undocumented immigrants are going to see that and they're going to be like, oh, fuck, I better not do this. I wanted to pay taxes, but I ain't going to risk, I ain't going to risk my ability to stay here just so I can pay your ass some taxes when you're trying to deport me. So even having the debate is actually is problematic. So to be clear, that allows them to pay federal income taxes. On top of that, payroll taxes, which fund Medicare and Social Security, that is taken out of the paycheck from the get-go, which means that undocumented workers pay that the same way that other workers do. But because you need a Social Security number to get Social Security, because duh, or Medicare, they're not benefiting from it, which means that they're actually paying in to Medicare and Social Security with payroll taxes, but they're not benefiting from that. So this is important because in terms of Social Security, we currently have a deficit, which means that in order to pay out everything that we owe, we have to dip into our reserve. And if nothing changes, that reserve will actually run dry by 2033.
Whoa,
and after that happens,
really soon.
Yeah, and after that happens, retirees will be paid 77 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
For what they're owed.
That's crazy.
And there are a lot of reasons for that. And one of the biggest reasons is the fact that, there's a reason why they were called baby boomers. There were a ton of them.
Yeah.
And they're retiring now. All right? Baby boomers are retiring, but the next generation, ironically, a lot of the ones who were actually birthed by the baby boomers, who are now working age and are within that, that sweet spot of the amount of time they'll be working, the people that are coming of age, there are less of them.
Yeah.
Baby boomers had less kids.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's not sexy, but population, like consistency and stability over time really fucking matters to the stability of our economy and the functioning of our government. And migrants and immigrants are a great way to help smooth that out. We're lucky that we have people attempting to come to this country. There are many countries who are facing population problems, shrinking population, people fleeing the country so their population is shrinking, which leads to economic instability and instability overall. We are lucky that we've got people coming to this country that are able to and willing to contribute to our economy and to Nathan's point, our government programs.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, ironically, baby boomers who, statistically tends to be more anti-immigration, the people that are saving your ass the most, that are allowing you to retire and get your Social Security, are the immigrants who are coming in to try to accommodate for the lower population, which, by the way, is also your fault because you didn't have as many babies.
Yeah.
Baby boomers didn't have as many babies.
Nathan's now a big baby advocate. We'll get that in the second segment.
We'll get to that. So the point is that in a lot of ways, immigrants could actually be one of the big saving graces for various different problems with our economy.
Yeah.
All right. They pay billions of dollars each year to Social Security and Medicare. In fact, the IRS estimates that undocumented immigrants pay about $9 billion in payroll taxes annually. And again, that's $9 billion that they will never get a return on.
Sure. Yeah. It's actually kind of not cool. We're kind of taking advantage of that.
It's not cool. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the other facet of this. Like, the status quo is actually us taking an unfair advantage of immigrants. And yet they want you to believe that immigrants are the ones who are draining us.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the only aspects of kind of truth that there might be to the steel man that I gave earlier is about depression of wages. And let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Because there actually is a measure of truth to that. All right? When you have a large number of people in the workforce who are willing to take a significantly less amount of money, and you have a high supply of them, then that actually often does depress wages for other people within that sector.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that is true. That is absolutely true. The solution to that is twofold.
Yeah.
Number one, let them come out of the shadows and
Exactly.
become U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
So
Or
that
at
they're no
least
longer being,
give them a
or-
path
or-
to work legally.
or at least give them a path to work legally. So if they are given that citizenship, then the minimum wage becomes enforceable to them. All right? Which brings us to the second solution, which is raise the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah.
So even the one iota of an argument that might kind of hold some merit is still solved through progressive politics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
The thing is, as we close out the segment, like, there's a ton wrong with our immigration system. We've got like limited asylum. We've got backed up asylum courts. We've got a really complex policy to get into this country with very, very limited pathways to citizenship. Like, we've got a ton of problems with our immigration system. Almost none of them are the problems that Republicans are pointing to, or even the problems that Democrats are really trying to point to and solve right now.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, so like, the crisis here is not the one that Republicans are talking about, and it is not the surge of people coming to our southern border. It is a totally self-imposed crisis where we are not attempting even a little bit to solve the actual critical fundamental problems with our immigration system, so we can embrace all of the incredible benefits of a thriving immigration system.
Yeah. So to summarize everything up, all right? Immigrants, undocumented immigrants, do not commit more crimes than natural-born citizens. They are not a drain on our economy. They actually are a massive boost to the economy. They do pay taxes, and they do not get most of the benefits from that. I know that earlier, in the before I did the Steel Man, I said that I wasn't going to address any of the culture stuff. Because it's stupid, it's bullshit. But I just want to give a little bit of an anecdote that I think that I've given on this pod before, but I always like to give this when I'm talking about immigration. Right? Because they'll tell you that immigrants are, they're scary, they're dangerous, and they're just too different from us to fit into our culture. All right? When I was going to James Madison University as a student, which the area is a refugee resettlement area. There was one day where there was this massive snowstorm, and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, had come to visit, and she got snowed in with me. And the next day we were working on digging out her car from this, like this was the year where there was like 2.5 feet of snow in Virginia.
Yeah, the Virginia's not prepared for that. Yeah,
Virginia's not prepared for that, and we sure as hell were not. So her car was buried. All right, and so there we were outside in the snow working on trying to dig out her car, and randomly, this one guy who was a refugee. I'm not sure where he was from. He didn't speak any English. He just walked up to us with this really pleasant smile, and he took a shovel and he started helping us. He just started helping us dig the car out. Again, didn't speak any English, didn't say a word to us, just smiled at us and helped us dig the car out. And when we finished, we thanked him, and he just kind of smiled and just kept going.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just this random guy, who I do not know, this stranger just doing a random act of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So whenever I hear these people talk about how terrible like these immigrants are and how like draining they are, I think of that guy. Because yes, that's an anecdote, but I've actually lived among people. I've lived among people that come from various different communities. And I can tell you that they're some of the greatest people that I've ever met. Despite our differences, despite the fact that we didn't even share a language, we shared this moment, this act of kindness that I will never forget.
And now it's time for a more lighthearted segment, Tips for Good. So, Nathan, why do we do Tips for Good?
Well, Michael, I'm so glad you asked because we do Tips for Good because I'm going to watch you shine, going to watch you grow, going to paint a sign so you always know. As long as 1 and 1 is 2, woo woo, there could never be a father who loved his daughter more than I love you.
Oh, I don't know that song.
It's Paul Simon.
Guess my dad didn't love me, I guess.
It's Paul Simon.
Oh, I should definitely know that song then.
Yeah,
I
you
must
should know
a ton
that
of
song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a Paul Simon song.
Oh, sorry. I don't. I guess no paternal love in my household.
I guess
kidding.
I guess
Love you, Dad. I know you're not listening.
Yeah. Well, it's a song that I discovered recently for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and it makes you cry as you
It did
hold
make
your
me
little
cry.
baby.
First time yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Holding a baby,
Mm.
I gotta say, makes the world a better place.
Ugh, Paul Simon knew it. That's why he wrote the song.
Paul Simon knew it. Yeah. Which coincidentally,
Oh.
of like in against all odds, is also why we do Tips for Good.
Oh, crap. That's so true. Damn,
It is.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Michael, what is our tip for good this week?
All right. It's time again, folks. Get your fucking COVID booster.
Get it.
Yep, it's a real thing. It's still out there. COVID is still a disease that is circulating among us. We still get spikes of it, and it still takes people out. And so, the CDC recommends that everyone 5 years or older should get 1 dose of an updated COVID-19 vaccine to protect against COVID-19. And so, first of all, you can just get one. If you're not sure if you need one, you can just get another one. They're in plenty supply and they don't hurt you. And secondly, if you had your vaccine, like a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine before September 2023 or a Novavax vaccine before October 2023, then you definitely need to get an update so you can be fighting against the most prevalent strains. So basically, if you haven't gotten a COVID vaccine in the last 6 months or so, you are due. So head over to a pharmacy or your doctor or wherever and get stuck.
And that's Tips for Good.
So for our next segment, this is a little bit less of a research-intensive one, although I do have a study to cite right at the beginning.
I beg to differ because I have had 6 months of field research.
Field research. You're right. We've had our podcast anthropologist on site observing the behavior of young ones to derive these insights. Yeah, so we're talking about politics and parenthood and how being a parent, in this case, we have a father represented on the call, changes the way that, you feel about politics, the way you think about politics. Because so as I was thinking about and preparing for this, I found a couple like pretty large scale studies on this phenomenon. And, a study of like nearly 500,000 people spanning 88 countries was asking this particular question about whether becoming a parent affects the way people behave politically. And so what they actually found was that becoming a parent was a very strong predictor of movement from more liberal to more conservative worldviews, which is really interesting. So even like controlling for age, parenthood was like a better predictor than most other things that they studied at, predicting this more conservative shift. And so these are things like having more conservative opinions on like abortion and contraception, but also things like harsher criminal punishments, more support for police and the military and national security, and stuff like that. And then even beyond just parenthood, they also looked at like measurements of like parental care motivation. So this is like the amount of like good feelings people have about taking care of children, and across other studies as well, just temporary increases in parental care were associated with more conservative responses, more politically conservative responses on surveys administered right after enhancing this parental care. So, there are probably some methodological problems with these studies, but if we take this concept as a basis that becoming a parent can change your political opinions, and that the data shows that it tends to move people in a more conservative direction, I thought that'd be a really interesting, place to start as a kind of premise to start with as a jumping off point. So, Nathan, what do you think? Have you become an arch conservative? Have you experienced anything like that since becoming a dad 6 months ago?
Yeah, man. Like I just gotta tell you, since becoming a father,
Mm-hmm.
there have been some things that I've really changed my perspective on.
Whoa.
See, now that I'm a father,
Yeah.
I think about things like paid family leave
Mm-hmm.
and how much of a godsend it has been to have paid family leave. And you know
Mhm.
what I've been thinking?
Let's give
No
it
one
all
else
up.
should have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one else should be able to have should be allowed to have paid family leave. I mean, why the hell would we want to invest time in the early life of kids to spend with those kids, for the parents to spend with those kids? Why would we want paid family leave? And on top of that, let's talk. Don't get me started about healthcare. Do you have any idea how inexpensive it is to raise a kid?
How cheap and easy it is to
Do you
birth a
think that
child?
do you think that I need universal health care? Come on.
Yeah, that's so
Like,
true.
why would I want universal health care
Wow.
for my kid? Especially considering the fact that both my wife and I are cancer patients.
Sure.
I mean, you think I want to continue to be alive so that I can raise my kid? All right? Do you think that, don't you understand that I love the fact that the birth was actually free for us because we had already spent so much money on cancer treatments or on cancer screenings that we had already met our out of pocket. And I love that.
You lucky guy. Jesus.
Because it is so easy. And you know what? Universal pre-K. God, I can't believe Democrats are always talking about universal pre-K as if it's this really important thing. You know what I'm so looking forward to? I am so looking forward to spending a quarter of my paycheck on childcare so that I can go to work. All right? Because it's not like, I mean, it's ridiculous to think that the United States would in any way want to invest in the ability for parents to be able to work and also have kids. Why the hell would they do that? And honestly, let's talk about LGBTQ stuff. All right, let me just say, if my daughter does end up being a part of the LGBTQ community, you know what I don't want her to feel? I don't want her to feel accepted. Because if
Sure.
she felt accepted, then, I mean, it might reduce her suicidal ideation. And why would I want that as a parent? That is ridiculous.
Yes.
And come on, let's talk about public schools for a second. All right, public schools. I love the fact that since the 1980s, that conservatives have basically led this insurgent campaign to bring to bring a bunch of conservatives into local public school boards so that they can systematically sabotage public schools to force people to go to private schools or religious schools, or to incentivize the desire to go to private schools or religious schools or charter schools that have less regulation on the types of teachers that you're allowed to have, and give you overall less options in your education. They say that it gives you more options, but I don't need more options. Anyways, I don't even know where I'm jumbled with. I don't even know where I'm going with that jumbled mess. Anyway, the point is, I don't want my public schools to be higher quality. All right, that would be ridiculous. I mean, it's something that I think that she can really do without, because wanting a better future for your daughter is just really tacky, and honestly, quite frankly, it's just feminine. Um, and
Oh
you
my
mentioned
god.
abortion.
Oh my god, I'm losing it. That's so fucking funny.
And you mentioned abortion. You know, when my wife was going through 36 hours of labor, you know what I was thinking to myself? People that don't want a kid should absolutely be forced to do this.
Yeah, you're going to force every person with a vagina to go through that.
Yeah, everyone should have to go through it. I mean, you know, perhaps it's true that if men could give birth, that that not only would abortion be legal, but it would be publicly funded and available at drive-throughs. But you know what? I, I'm
You
not a
can't. So
woman.
yeah.
I can't. So
Yeah.
why would I care about that?
Yeah.
And especially why would I care about that, considering the fact that I have a daughter? You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
and in case it wasn't clear, I've actually found myself, okay, sarcasm's
That
over.
was the best sarcastic rant. I want the listener to know that was all impromptu. I could see Nathan's wheels turning. He was not reading that. That was all off the cuff. This is the talent that I am working with on this show. Like it just wow.
No, I you know, and I do somewhat feel kind of bad for making that rant, because it is kind of looking down at other parents. But one of the things that I would say that I do feel like has changed is I honestly feel more emboldened, and and on certain issues I give kind of less shits about what other people think,
Hmm.
you know?
Interesting, because you cared so much before.
Well, I mean, there on some issues, yeah.
Yeah.
Like on some issues, yeah.
Mhm.
Like I will say I've gotten to the like I'm at the point now where like I've always been for paid family leave,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of at the point now where I truly believe that if you are a politician who does not believe in paid family leave, you are an irredeemable piece of shit,
Mm. Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
Like if you are a politician. Now, I still do try to separate the politicians from like the voters.
Yeah. Sure.
But like if you are a politician that is against that, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it is so big, it is so important. All right? The fact that I have been able to spend this time bonding with my daughter is such a godsend. All right? And it means that I'm able to be there for those firsts.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first time she's able to roll herself over, God, I cried.
Sure.
Like I cried when I saw that for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Um the fact that I'm able to alleviate my wife, all
Mm.
the stress on my wife. Um
Yeah. Who not only is like recovering from giving fucking birth, but also like the physical, mental, emotional strain of new motherhood, and also feeding a child.
yeah.
Like that is a huge physical, mental, and emotional toll that like you can't alleviate. So the fact that you're there to alleviate the sleep deprivation, like do like bottle feedings when you can, like the fact that you can help out even a little in those other ways because you're
Yeah.
around and available is like absolutely critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can both kind of like look, anybody who's ever had a baby can tell you that uh it's difficult. There are times that you reach your emotional limit. And just having someone to just be like, "All right, I need to take a break. Can you hold this kid for a while?" Look, kids are amazing. All right, babies are amazing, but anybody who has ever been screamed at for 3 hours straight can tell you that having someone else there is a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, so, so like, I mean, so paid family leave, just so important. And let's talk about let's talk about abortion for a little bit, because I think that's one
Mm.
where I do, intuitively somewhat, you can understand why a
Sure.
person might become less pro-abortion if they have
Yeah.
kids.
All of a sudden, you've got a brain flooded with all of these baby loving chemicals.
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah,
care about this thing more than anything else in the world. And the idea that someone could not want one, or someone could choose something else, or someone could,
yeah,
you know, kill a baby, quote unquote, which is always
yeah,
the most provocative framing, is absurd and crazy intuitively.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for anybody that's like listened before, I've probably mentioned that this is an IBF baby,
Yeah.
uh, which means that this was this could not have been more of a Planned Parenthood. Like, this could not have been more planned. This was something that we really, really, really wanted, and we had to go out of our way in many ways, pay extra money in order to get.
Sure. Having this
Because
baby required as many people as like an orgy, but way less fun.
yeah, she was conceived when Sylvia was conceived. There were a lot of people in the room. But like, here's what I'll say. Although one of the greatest moments in my life that I will always remember will be the moment that she was born, the
Mhm.
moment I saw her come into the world. Some people might find childbirth gross. Some people might find it. Apparently, it's common for husbands to like faint.
Mm.
I didn't. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen.
Mm.
Like, when she was born, it was like a whole nother world had just been created. Becoming a father, you know what? I didn't, I feel like it's not that I became a father. It's that I realized I was one,
Hmm.
and I know that that sounds like a distinction without a difference, but I don't, I feel like a lot of people who have had kids are probably going to know exactly what I mean,
Hmm.
you
Interesting.
know,
Yeah.
like, and it was the most amazing moment ever. But that came after a 36-hour labor.
Hmm.
A 36-hour labor, right? Um and Jess was going without an epidural for most of it.
Wow.
Like, cuz she didn't want an epidural.
Hmm.
Um she actually, at the end of it, she actually had to do an epidural because, like, she was so stressed out. They were just like, "Listen, you just need to get some sleep."
Sure.
All right? You
Yeah.
need to get some sleep, and then maybe you'll be fully dilated. But she just wasn't dilating.
Hmm.
All right? And man, those contractions, like, the movies the movies and TV shows will make you think that the scariest part of pregnancy, that the most painful part of pregnancy, of giving birth is like the moment of the birth.
Hmm.
It's not. All right. I mean, maybe it is if you have like an epidural. I don't know. I don't know. But like, I can tell you what Jess's experience was, and, my experience watching it. And that is the fact that the contractions got so painful for her that this woman, who is the strongest willed person I know, and any of you who have ever heard her on the pod, like, she is a fucking firebrand. And she gave me permission to share this, by the way. She was basically reduced to a childlike state
Hmm.
where she was begging me to take her home. She was begging me to make the pain stop.
Hmm.
She was every time the contraction came, she was crying. And by the time she was dilated and she was actually pushing, she was so tired from sleep deprivation that she was falling asleep between pushes,
Wow.
to the point where she was like fully asleep, snoring. And the contractions were 2 minutes apart at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So she would push, fall asleep for like less than a minute, and then wake back up to push again.
Wow.
That is how exhausted this woman was. And while this was happening, and look, let me be clear. Both Jess and I agree, that our child is worth it. Was
Mhm.
worth all of it.
Yeah.
Even with all of the things that we have to go through in terms of parenting, taking care of her, dealing with all the crying, the fact that she doesn't like riding in cars, which
is
we're trying to
usually
explain to her.
a very
That's
sleepy
usually
time.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually something that you use to calm down a baby. She hates it. Like just the other day, we were driving back from my parents' house to my house, and it was an hour and a half long car ride. The entire time, nonstop crying,
Jesus.
nonstop. But we feel that it's all worth it. However, nobody should have to go through this unless they really, really fucking want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying that some people can't realize that this is what they wanted later if they decide to keep a pregnancy, even if it's unplanned. That's great. If that happens, that's great. But if, like, a woman should never have to give birth, should never have to go through the trauma of childbirth unless she really wants to.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Or be a parent unless you really, really want to.
Yeah.
So, honestly, nothing has made me more pro-choice than the experience of being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing has honestly made me more of a leftist in terms of economics
Yeah.
than this. Because, like I brought up healthcare, like the cost of healthcare for kids is it's just another cost that already comes with many costs of having a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And especially with Jess and me, because we're both cancer patients,
Mm-hmm.
And I have decent insurance. I actually do have pretty decent insurance. It's just we use it so often that it does end up affecting us financially. Like we're able to get by decently enough. I'm not going to pretend like we're struggling, but it would be huge for us if we didn't have to deal with that.
Sure.
That would be huge for us.
Yeah.
And
huge for all parents, huge for all people that need medical care.
Yeah.
Someday, huge for Sylvia when she's handling her own medical care.
Exactly. Exactly. And universal pre-K is just, it's such a non-brainer.
Mm-hmm. All
right. The cost I mentioned earlier, the cost of most of the places, on average, the places that we've looked at for daycare when I go back to work is like a quarter of my paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You're disincentivizing people from going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that?
Which we've talked about before. Like
we've talked
the
about
power
this.
of paying
We've
for
talked about
childcare
this.
could be an incredible benefit to our account.
Yeah. And look, culturally, I understand that. I mean, I don't understand why, but I understand that a lot of people become more culturally conservative in terms of stuff like, save the children from the queers or whatever. But like, there's just no evidence that any of that grooming bullshit is happening.
Yeah. So,
and I want her to grow to be more accepting of various different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want her to be accepting of people. And if she ends up being, having some type of queer identity, I want her to accept herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I want her to be accepted, to feel accepted by us.
Yeah.
We know that suicidal ideation among queer youth is like, I believe it for we've cited this before, but like for trans people, it's like 50%. I don't remember what the statistic is for like being gay or lesbian, but we do know that suicidal ideation is reduced drastically when you feel like you're in a welcoming and safe environment. We know that. We know that that's how it is. And given all of the work that I have put into this girl, I kind of want to prevent that. I kind of want
her to live a great life.
I want her to live a great and long life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. As I was reading these studies that I referenced earlier, one of the hypotheses that they had for why this happens is that it's derived from the exact thing that you're describing, with the incredible love and connection and passion you feel for caring for your daughter, which is this incredible evolutionary drive to protect our kids.
Yeah.
So the idea is that this hypothesis is that it pushes parents, because of this drive, to potentially move towards more conservative, less like freewheeling policies that they either implicitly or explicitly believe drive the safety and security of their kids. Military,
Yeah.
police, like more significant criminal punishment and that kind of stuff. What's interesting, and I wonder if this might be why you have a different perspective and a different experience, Nathan, is like, I don't know, what actually kills kids? Like, what actually shortens people's lives is lack of health care.
Yeah.
What actually shortens and puts at risk lives of the LGBT community is like non-acceptance, especially as teenagers. Like, that to keep your kids safe, you have to push for policies that will keep them economically secure, well educated, like
Yeah.
in like the thing it almost goes back to our episode about life expectancy for Democratic versus Republican policies. It's like,
Yeah.
what actually will be the best thing for your kids because of this difference in information. So you don't have to rely on your gut instinct where more guns equals more safety and more security. It's like, no,
Yeah.
what we actually need are all of these liberal policies that they don't just make people's lives better. They don't just protect people better. They actually keep more people alive and help them live longer and live better. So there's my hypothesis from like that study and what you described is like it's a combination of optimism. If we can do these things, Sylvia's life will be great,
Yeah.
and a very paternal and maternal and parental instinct to protect your kid, and what puts your kid actually at risk.
So what's interesting about that is that I actually do kind of feel a protective instinct that goes beyond any logic.
Hmm.
Like, and I can kind of understand, like I know that I said, I did that whole sarcastic rant, but like I can kind of understand that when it comes to protecting your kid, your greatest fear, like I don't care what you
Hmm.
were afraid of before, like your greatest fear becomes anything happening to that kid.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I'm terrified of alligators. All right. I am terrified of them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have nightmares about them. Anytime I see them on TV, I freak out. All right. My fellow speech team friends used to prank me by in the team room they would change my background to an alligator so that when I logged in there'd be an alligator and I would scream. Like I would turn it on, I would scream. All right, I'm terrified of alligators. Um, I would jump into a swamp filled with filled with 1,000 alligators to save my kid.
Mm.
All right. I would wrestle an alligator with my bare hands. I would crawl inside of an alligator's mouth to protect my kid. That is not logical.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There's no fucking logic that could drive me to that would drive me to do any of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
But I do it because there is an intense amount of fear. And one of the things that we do know based on a lot of studies is that what drives a lot of conservative thinking
Yeah.
is fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and again, that's not me trying to be like that's not me trying to be patronizing. Like that is what the studies show.
Mm-hmm.
Like the studies do show that does drive a lot of this conservative thinking. And look, you know, there's probably some ways in which some of my mental approaches have become more, you know, more conservative in terms of confrontation.
Hmm.
Like I'm more likely to be an asshole to somebody that I feel is like providing any level of threat to my kid.
Mm.
And I'm more willing to, you know, jump to violence instead of thinking something through if something was threatening my kid. I almost like I tried to run after a guy on a motorcycle recently. Like obviously he was on a motorcycle, so I couldn't possibly. But like there was this asshole in my neighborhood. I was pushing Sylvia in my neighborhood in her carriage, and there's this asshole on a bike. Who, you know, I saw him, like I waved everybody, so I waved at him. He waved at me, and then he got up right next to my baby, revved his engine as loud as he could next
Oh
to this
my
baby
God.
with sensitive ears and wheelied through a residential neighborhood going like 50 miles an hour.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And I screamed at him. He made Sylvia cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sylvia was crying. And in that moment, I just wanted to tackle him and just beat the shit out of him. And I'm
Sure.
not a violent man by nature. Like,
Sure.
I am not a violent person by nature. All right. That's not the type of thing that I do. But like, this guy made my baby cry. And I just wanted to beat the shit out of him.
Mm.
And I think that is a response that I think a lot of conservatives might relate to. You know, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, being willing, like being that protective of your kid, I don't say that as if it's a bad thing. I think that, you know, there is a place for that. But you know, I guess when it comes to looking at policies, you do also have to look at what is happening in reality. And the reality is that a lot of the policies that Republicans push directly hurt the future.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest example that I didn't even bring up
climate
earlier,
change.
Climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like, I want the earth to still be here and to be clean and livable. You know, the fact that, you know, when we were kids, you know, in our area of Virginia, we would get regular snow days.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't happen in the winter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't get a lot of snow days. We had like maybe, you know, 3 days where there was a little bit of snow, but there wasn't a proper snow all winter.
Yeah.
Like, there are aspects, and summer is so freaking hot that like you can't even be outside for that long. Like, my favorite season used to be spring,
Mm-hmm.
but now spring is basically just summer. You know, now my favorite season is fall because fall is what spring used to be, basically.
Yeah.
So there's so much that I want to do to protect her, to keep her safe, and to make sure that she has the best future. And conservative policies just ain't it.
And now it's time for one of our favorite segments, a miscellaneous what the fuck. So Nathan, what the fuck's a miscellaneous what the fuck?
Well, Michael, I'll tell you what a miscellaneous what the fuck is. So we have a segment for Asshat of the Week for particularly heinous individuals, and Dershowitz Bag for people that just make stupid, self-defeating arguments. But every now and then, there's a story that comes across that's, you know, not exactly like someone being an asshat. I mean, they might be an asshat, but it's not like it's, you know, it's more just silly or weird than anything particularly heinous. And it isn't someone making a stupid argument or a self-defeating argument. Instead, it's just a random story that we find that just makes us go, what the fuck?
That sounds pretty random. I don't know that I can think of any examples of that. So what the fuck is our miscellaneous what the fuck this week?
Well, Michael, so I was watching a clip from this middle school recently. Sorry, not middle school. From Congress recently. There was a committee hearing in the House of Representatives where it involved Marjorie Taylor Jewish Space Lasers Green.
Oh, great.
And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which I don't know who thought it would be a good idea to put them in the same room.
Dude, I'm literally in my head. It's like the Tekken choose your character screen, and you've got like each of them like doing their bobby back and forth, just like getting ready to fight. Oh man, I'm excited.
Yeah. And also Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is someone that I before this I did not know, and I
think I was a fan of her great grandfather Davy.
I mean, I don't know. She's from Texas, maybe. That was Texas, right?
A lot of cachet down there for sure. Yeah.
So anyways, they were in a committee hearing, which was apparently, it was about some resolution about Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Mhm.
Honestly, I don't know what the actual purpose of it is, and neither does anybody else, because all they're focusing is all people are focusing on is this fucking shit.
Mhm.
So randomly in the middle of it, Green started asking the Democrats about if any of the Democrats on the committee were employing Judge Merkin's daughter, who is the judge who is overseeing Trump's criminal trial, which I don't see how that has anything to do with a resolution over Merrick Garland.
Mhm.
And neither did Jasmine Crockett,
Mhm.
because she responded to Green by saying, "Do you know what we're here for?" To which Green responded by saying, "I don't think you know what you're here for. I think your fake eyelashes are messing with your reading."
Oh my god. Oh man.
And from there, AOC kind of flipped out, and she demanded that what Jewish space lasers said be taken
Removed,
from the
yeah.
record,
Yeah.
removed. She said, "quote That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?" Which, in fucking Congress.
I know.
Like,
Your
you're in
comment about
Congress.
middle school really makes sense now. Jesus.
And then to which Green started further escalating it by basically being all by asking AOC if, her feelings were hurt. Did I hurt your feelings? Did I hurt your feelings? And and again, that's one of those things where, in some context, the whole "how dare you" might come off as pretentious. But again, this is Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to say certain shit at certain times in Congress. You have to say like "hear ye," and like "I," and like the floor recognizes this like there are formalities in Congress that you have to follow. This is a serious fucking job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Green apparently agreed to have it taken, have the comment taken from the record,
Mhm.
but she refused to apologize. To which Crockett responded by, she was trying to ask for clarification as to what constitutes an insult during a hearing, because she wasn't required to apologize for this. So what Crockett said was, quote, "I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling, if someone on this committee was talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, would that would not be engaged in personalities, correct?" To which Chairman James Comer said, "What now?"
Oh my god. He's like in the middle of this like backhanded physical commentary. Just to clarify the rule for the chair, if I called someone in this room an annoying, heinous asshole, would that be personal insult? Oh, that's amazing.
God, and this is Congress. This is Congress.
absurd.
I don't hold this against Crockett because Green started it.
Sure.
Like,
And because we really don't like MTG. Let's not pretend to be impartial here.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, fuck her. but Jesus, you're first off, the whole strategy of attacking the judge in the trial,
Oh, I know.
who will control Donald Trump's fate
Mm-hmm.
if the jury finds him guilty, and attacking his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
is that really something you want to do? Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to piss off the judge that holds this guy's fate in your hand? Do you really want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. That's how the whole thing started.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, I don't know. I mean,
I like that Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't like, yeah, we're here for this purpose. Or like, actually, I think this is a legitimate question. She was like, well, I don't think you know why we're here either.
yeah.
It's
Like,
absurd.
you sound like a parody of yourself.
Yeah, she's crazy.
And at one point she actually insulted AOC's intelligence, which is rich coming from her.
That's hilarious.
I honestly, I don't know who's dumber, her or Laura Boebert, but
dude, there's some competition these days.
There's some competition
I think
there.
it's probably Laura Boebert.
I don't know. They're neck and neck there.
Yeah, well,
but in terms of being a petty shill,
mm-hmm.
I think Jewish Space Lasers takes the gold.
Well, You heard it here first, folks. And so congratulations to Marjorie Taylor Jewish Space Lasers Green for being this week's miscellaneous What the Fuck. And now we will end our show as we usually do with our highlights. So Nathan, what's your highlight this week?
My highlight this week is that this last weekend I got to go visit my wife's family, and while I was there, I got to see my good friend Dan and his wife, and got to hang out with them. And I haven't seen them in a while, so it was just a fun time. The drive back was. Let's not talk about the drive back. I mean, we already talked about the drive back earlier, but let's not talk about it anymore.
Yep.
But the time spent there, it was just nice. It was fun. Yeah.
That sounds great.
About you, Mike's, what's your highlight?
My highlight is perspective. This weekend, Bree and I are going to be with a group of friends participating in a multi-sport like relay race outside Seattle. So basically, it's like 5 or 6 different sports, and each person does a leg of the race and then hands off like their tracker to like the next person. And so Bree is doing the canoe section with one of our friends, and then I'm doing the cyclocross section as well. So that'll be on Sunday. So we're super psyched for that. So that's gonna be really fun.
Nice, have fun, brother.
Thanks, buddy. And now we'll thank the amazing people that make this show possible. So thank you to our incredible patrons, Jerry DeViller, Taylor Bloom, Tobias Janssen, Kyle Chaska, and Fade Out Scoop for being our patrons. Thank you to Kayla for all they do to make this show possible as our editor. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to The Perspectrum. And you'll hear from us again next week.